This day in sports history. It's August 13th, and on this day over the course of many years, we said goodbye to Mickey Mantle, hello to Steve Young, sort of, and asked Avery Brundage, what the hell? This is This Day in Sports History, and I'm your host, Steve White. Let's start with what happened on this day in 1995, when New York Yankee legend Mickey Mantle died way too young. Mickey Mantle had always been a little uncomfortable with being the Mick. He loved hitting baseballs a long way, loved playing for the Yankees, and he loved being around his teammates, but he didn't need or really want to be famous. Sure, it afforded him nice perks and privileges, gorgeous women, free drinks from adoring fans, and the money was pretty good while he was playing, but carrying that weight of being an icon became a burden that was a little tough to bear. Add to that the nagging injuries from a career played hard in a body that he did not take care of. He played 18 years, he was a 16-time All-Star, a 3-time MVP, he led the league in home runs 4 times, and he hit 536 of those in his career. By any account, that is a great career, but still, Mickey felt he'd wasted it. Just a few months before he died, he did an interview at the All-Star game, and he talked about his failure to accomplish anywhere near what he thought he could have.
You talk about a role model. This is a role model. Don't be like me, you know? I mean, God gave me a body, ability to play baseball, and that's what I wanted to do. It was just wasted. I was given so much. I blew it.
It's hard to watch, and it's really hard to understand how a guy who had the career that he had talk about blowing it. He was chased by demons for most of his life, and that led him to drink to excess and become an alcoholic, to seek comfort in women, so much so that it destroyed his marriage. He talked about doing card shows and meeting fans, and how many of them would bring scrapbooks of newspaper clippings of things that he'd done as a player, and he would look through it, and it seemed like he was reading stories about another person. He was having an out-of-body experience. It was just somebody else, not a younger him. It was just somebody completely different. He recalled one interaction with a fan who brought his son to an event, and the dad said, "Son, this is Mickey Mantle, the greatest ball player who ever lived." To which the kid replied, "But Dad, he's an old man." And the thing is, Mickey wasn't an old man. He just looked like one. The drinking and the partying took a toll. He followed his friend Pat Summerall's advice and he got sober, and he started to feel better. But then on June 1st, 1995, Mantle was admitted to the hospital for what was described as a little stomach issue. It took a few days, but it soon came out that it was liver cancer, and he needed a transplant. Miraculously, or maybe more so because he was Mickey Mantle, a donor liver was found within 24 hours, and by the 8th, he had a new liver. But during that operation, doctors discovered his cancer had spread. The mixture of immunosuppressant medication and anti-cancer drugs counteracted each other, and the cancer spread rapidly throughout his body. He lost 40 pounds in just a few weeks. He continued to fight, but the cancer kept spreading, and by August, the cancer had spread into his lungs and beyond. In the early morning hours of the 13th, Mantle, surrounded by his family, passed away quietly at the age of 63. His funeral was attended by nearly 5,000 people inside and outside a Dallas megachurch, with Roy Clark singing "Yesterday When I Was Young," a special request from Mantle himself. Summerall said that song seemed to encapsulate and sum up Mantle's life. This episode is brought to you by Firefly Books, and with you being a sports fan just like me, here's 2 suggestions for your next great sports read. If you love basketball, then you need to add Dave Zarum's book, NBA 75, The Definitive History. Uncover untold stories of triumph, controversy, and the greatest stars of the game. From the league's humble beginnings to its modern glory, it is a courtside seat to 75 years of NBA history. And if you're a golf fanatic, then you gotta check out Matt Adams' book, The the golf round I'll never forget. I've used it as a reference in this podcast over the past year for lots of stories that I've done, and I can tell you from experiencing it, this is a great book. Relive 50 of golf's most memorable moments through the eyes of the legends themselves. It's the closest you'll ever get to walking the fairways with the greatest to ever play the game. Grab your copy of NBA 75 or The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, available from Firefly, wherever you get your books. On this day in 1991, San Francisco 49er quarterback Joe Montana suffered an injury that set in motion the rise of his successor. Now, that's just part of the story, but let's start here and then rewind. So, on this day, the Niners were having a regular preseason practice, no contact to the QBs for sure. Montana was throwing some deep balls, and when he launched a 40-yard pass to one of his receivers during a drill, he felt a pop. Well, that pop hurt, and that hurt turned out to be a torn tendon in his right elbow. The Niners were coming off of a really good year. They'd played in the NFC Championship game back in January, but lost to the New York Giants, the eventual Super Bowl champs. Well, in that game, Montana had taken a brutal hit in the fourth quarter, delivered by defensive end Leonard Marshall.
Here's Montana, long time in the pocket, but chased out, finally hit from behind. The ball's loose, and turnover maybe.
I'll tell you, and that is the one we know about Joe Montana. We know about his back, and he really took a shot in that back. Although he was rolling to his right, it was still his backside.
Montana was laid out and suffered a broken hand, a few cracked ribs, a bruised stomach, and a bruised sternum. Steve Young came in on the next series through a 25-yard completion, and if not for a Roger Craig fumble, Young may have taken the Niners back to the Super Bowl for a shot at a three-peat. Even though he only threw one completion, a lot of people point to that moment as the beginning of the rise of Steve Young. But in preseason camp, Montana was back in as the starter until his elbow tendon snapped on this day, so the job was handed to Young again, and this time he would not give it up. Montana missed the entire 91 season and the majority of the 92 season, but by the time he was cleared to play, Steve Young was entrenched as the number one. Montana was eventually traded to Kansas City after the 92 season, largely based on what happened on this day back in 1991. This episode is brought to you by the Sterling Soap Company. Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, cologne, and many more personal care products in a large variety of scents, you're sure to find something that's perfect for you or that special someone in your life. Check them out at sterlingsoap.com. On this day in 1936, it was one of the most brutal and unfair decisions ever handed down against an athlete. Jesse Owens had just wowed Germany and the world, winning 4 gold medals and spoiling Hitler's parade of supposed Aryan superiority in the process. Owens had finished up his Olympics on the 9th with the 4x100 relay. The games were still going on and, in fact, would not wrap up until the 16th. On this day in 1936, though, the man who had just electrified the world with his performance was declared a professional athlete by American Olympic Committee President Avery Brundage and banned from competition for life. How did we go from national hero to persona non grata before the Olympics even ended? Well, first know that Brundage wielded a lot of power. As not only the head of the AOC, but until 1935, he'd been head of the Amateur Athletic Union, or AAU. If you were an American track athlete, you ran under the AAU banner. So the AAU set up post-Olympic events around Europe for American track athletes to compete, signing contracts with various cities and organizations. What the AAU cared about in this situation was money. The way they treated the athletes, like Owens, was of little concern. Owens and other track stars' first performance was on the 10th, the day after the 4x100 final. That meet was held in Cologne, Germany. The organizers told Brundage that if Owens participated, there was an additional 10 to 15% from the gate receipts coming the AAU's way. Owens was tired, as you can imagine, and he was not interested. But he wasn't really given a choice. So he competed, and he won the 100-meter dash and the long jump on the 10th. There was a banquet after which he was expected to attend. And when the banquet ended, it was midnight. Next stop on the 11th, Prague. And this time, Owens was sent by himself. He slept in the airport, had no money for food or shelter, borrowed enough to buy a sandwich and some milk, made it to the venue at 4:30 in the afternoon, ran the 100 and the long jump, and won both again. On the 12th, it was back to Germany and a meet in the small town of Bochum. He hadn't eaten in a day. The AAU had not given him any travel money or arranged for any way to feed himself or lodging or given the benefit of a day of rest. Instead, he relied on the kindness of strangers to feed him in the afternoon, bussed to the local stadium where he equaled his world record time in the 100 meters. Traveling again with his teammates, the next stop on the tour on this day was England. They were all forced to sleep in an airport hangar. 3 straight days of traveling and competing with, as Owens put it, no money to even buy a souvenir. Every one of the athletes knew the AAU was making money on their appearances at these events, and they were not getting anything. Owens had been getting telegrams, though, with offers to come race in the States or just appear in a show or at an orchestral performance. One promoter offered him $40,000. Another offered up $25,000. So think about it. You are a 22-year-old black man with no money to your name. You've just won 4 gold medals and you are the talk of the world. People are offering you money to just come be in a show or race a few races. Or you could stay an amateur athlete and be paraded around Europe like a show pony with not a penny for your efforts or your trouble. Which would you choose? Owens ran the race in England on this day, and he won again. Next up was Stockholm, then on to Finland and Norway, but he had had enough. He pulled out of the rest of the tour and booked passage on a boat back to New York City. Well, as soon as Brundage heard the news on this day, he declared Owens a professional athlete and banned him for life from competing on the amateur level ever again. The suspension became automatic as soon as Owens refused to fulfill his competitive obligations, according to his telegram to AAU Secretary Daniel Ferris. Brundage used his fury to destroy a man, a black man, Jesse Owens, 4-time medal winner. Here's the thing, though. Owens hadn't signed a contract. He hadn't been paid by anybody yet. He'd just gotten tired of running, and tired of running so somebody else could get paid a lot of money. But Brundage was mad. Mad because his show horse left the show that he'd never signed up for to begin with. And Brundage wielded his iron hammer with authority. When Owens got off the boat in New York City, the promises of big money never materialized. There was a lot of talk, but that's all it was. Talk. And Jesse Owens was out of luck as long as Avery Brundage was in charge. Months later, Owens was in Havana, Cuba, racing a horse for money. The race was initially scheduled to be against Cuban sprinter Conrado Rodriguez, but Brundage threatened to ban Rodriguez if he raced against Owens. Brundage only got stronger and more wealthy, becoming a millionaire from his construction business and real estate dealings. Owens, on the other hand, filed for bankruptcy in 1939. He spent the next 16 years looking for a steady job. He raced more horses, raced heavyweight champ Joe Louis, but the events and the money became less and less over time. He was still fast, though. In 1950, at the age of 37, he ran a 100-yard dash in 9.7 seconds. Brundage was still in charge, though, and eventually took over as IOC president in 1952 and held on to that position for 20 years. According to Owens' wife, Minnie, Jesse was not a bitter man, though he had every right to be so. He liked moving ahead with his life. It was always like he was gearing up for the Olympics, and nothing was going to stop him. Except, of course, for Avery Brundage and what he did on this day in 1936. A time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. It is a myth that you only use 10% of your brain. You actually use all of it. Your brain is even active when you're asleep, and while it may not seem like it, especially when you get older, brain information can travel up to an impressive 350 miles per hour. When a neuron is stimulated, it generates an electrical impulse that travels from cell to cell at that speed. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.